Well, ladies and gentlemen, these are my disclosures. We all have disclosures. No one read them, but we need to do that. But what I would like to tell you is something, my story. Well, as you know, I have led the ARIA guidelines for about 20 years. And I found out that I am unable, I repeat, I am unable to follow them. Don't you think it's surprising? So if I am not able to follow them, those who have not written the guidelines may even follow less. So either these guidelines are stupid, possibly, or they may need to change, or there may be something else. And this is what I'm trying to tell you today. So when we are doing guidelines, we are proposing this from, sorry, where is the, okay. We're proposing this, and in fact we should focus on the central part of Dali. Number one, this painting is in St. Petersburg, but not in Russia, in Florida, where you have the biggest Dali museum. So it's a masquerade. First of all, it's different. Second, Dali didn't want to paint these beautiful ladies. And this is what we see as doctors when we see a patient. He wanted to paint the head of Voltaire. And in fact, with mobile application, you can see what we do not see in the clinic. So we need to adapt the guidelines to modern medicine. So I want to tell you why next generation care pathways. First of all, care pathways in real life. Second, the cell phone. 3, innovation in epidemiology. 4, innovation in management. And then next generation care pathways. So what is the difference between a guideline and a care pathway? Usually a guideline is a piece of paper. In GINA you have 176 recommendations, so no one can read that. And now we're trying to go to 2 pages at most, but everything digitalized. Second, the guidelines are written by an expert group with little information on real life, whereas care pathways are utilized in real life by a multidisciplinary team. Second, care pathways have a focus on the quality and coordination of care. So it's clear that what is done in the UK cannot be done in France or transferred directly because we have different health systems. ICPs need to have mechanisms for recording variations. They are intended to act as a guide to treatment, and sometimes we see that when we are proposing care pathways, these care pathways are not done by the doctor. So, any alteration to the practice identified within the guideline or ICP must be noted as variance. And Joachim showed the ARIA classification, which is correlated with quality of life. Persistence is not associated with quality of life. So probably persistence is not very important, by the way. Persistence is associated with prediction of efficacy, with the duration of treatment, and with asthma multimorbidity. But the problem is that 80% or 70% of the patients treated by you do not follow guidelines because you are often prescribing H1 and blockers by oral route plus intranasal corticosteroids. And this is not in the guideline. So we need to agree for the variance. So now I would like to go to this. And ARIA, this is ARIA phase 3, which was in 2016. Phase 4 is in 2017, and phase 5 is in 2018 from last week. And you are the first to listen to that. Well, first of all, it's clear that ARIA is not any longer a guideline. It is a care pathway implementing emerging technologies for predictive medicine in rhinitis and asthma across the life cycle with real-world evidence. So, we are totally outside of what we said before. So this is the paper we published in 2014 with Ministers of Health, and now it is recommended by GARD, by the EIT Health. The EIT Health is European Innovation Technology, and it is the largest R&D project in the world, and the European Innovation Partnership on Active and Healthy Aging. Very simple. You go from patient with symptom to self-care. When you have a patient who has symptoms, she goes to take the medication they have and take them. Then, if it doesn't work, they go to the pharmacist, eventually to the GP, and rarely to the specialist. And it takes 5 years before a patient has the first symptoms to the specialist. And we need to shorten this. For this, we have 3 tools. We have the cell phone I will discuss today. We have a tablet for pharmacists and physicians, in which we have embedded the decision clinical system. And we have also in the EUFOREA website a questionnaire for physicians. The cell phone approach is the finger, either this one or that one, whatever you want. With the finger, it's enough. And it takes 1 minute a day. With the finger, we use a visual analog scale. Oh, sorry. Well, now we have 23 countries, 17 languages, 25,000 users, 180,000 days. It's free on Android and iOS. And the important issue is this. It is that people can assess their medications in the 23 countries using their IMS file. It is also with the data protection of the EU, the GDPR. And we recently published a paper on geolocation. So we are, and this is the first paper on geolocation in any chronic disease. It is also, and this is very important, a good practice. And this good practice is according to the EU criteria of CRODIS. And this was essential for the approval by the EU of our practice. We have data storage, transfer, and analysis, which is also very highly considered because we are working with Atos, which is a major IT company. Now, does this work? Well, first of all, innovation in epidemiology. What we did, first of all, we computed, in this case, for 32,000 days. Now we have 180,000. I didn't do the computation because I cannot find a program which is able to give the figure. And, in fact, if you take VS global measured, how are you today for your rhinitis? And VS knows, how are you for your nose? We have a very high correlation. If you take work, and this is in almost 17,000 days, it's extremely interesting to see that when you are well, you work well. When you are not well, you don't work well. In Spain, 20x billion euros, and in Europe, at least 50 billion euros are lost every year due to work productivity. But you can assess this with the system. Now, a new thing. We have found something new, knowing nothing about the patient. So it's totally different from what we do in epidemiology. Usually we have a file of that thick, we have a few patients, and we try to understand. Here, we do not know what are the patients, we just compute. Well, I did this computation, and I was not very happy because VS nose and VS asthma in 32,000 days, not very good. However, I could find that there are 4 groups of people. High asthma in orange, low rhinitis, almost no day. No, none, but high rhinitis, low asthma is going down. And then we have the surprise. High rhinitis, high asthma, an almost perfect correlation. So we have different phenotypes of patients. And this phenotype of patients can be seen exactly in the eye. So it is possible that we have patients with an extreme phenotype which have asthma, rhinitis, and conjunctivitis the same day. And this is what we found. On the left part of the slide, you see here that VS work is in orange, and it goes from 36 to 64, rhinitis, rhinitis and conjunctivitis. Well, so we should not say rhinoconjunctivitis. We should say rhinitis or rhinoconjunctivitis. And then you have asthma, but when you took the three, then you have a highest level of ES work or VS global. So there is a group who is probably the most severe. And I will show you that later. Then if you take the symptoms, it's very simple. When you have the three diseases, you have a higher level of each of the symptoms individually. So we found with this very funny system that in fact it works. So we said, okay, we have studied in a very big program, MEDAL, multimorbidity, and we didn't identify rhinitis and conjunctivitis. Is it true? The answer is no. It was there, but we didn't consider it. So the cell-phone approach told us to consider something else and to go to epidemiological studies to confirm. And then this paper has been published, first of all, in August 2018, and the review paper, the revision was sent in August 2018 in the same journal. Because what we found, the number of allergens found in rhinoconjunctivitis, rhinitis and rhinoconjunctivitis, increased from 2 to 8. And it is even higher when you have the third level. So not only we have a maximal phenotype, but also a different phenotype. Well, I asked to my friends from Portugal to do another study, and it is the Portuguese national cohort. If you have nasal symptoms with impairment, in this case, 80% conjunctivitis. You have nasal symptoms without impairment, in this case, 40% conjunctivitis. So rhinoconjunctivitis and rhinitis are different. And this is a study which is going to be presented next week at the ERS. It's a Finnish study, and you see that the asthma is increasing according to the number of multimorbidities. So you have to associate the multimorbidities. So Mask told us two things. One, the phenotypes differ. Two, association of symptoms is very important. Now, innovation in management. Well, we have plenty of limitations of mobile technology. I totally agree. Now, I take this out and I said, what did we find? Well, first of all, it is 5% of adherence in people who are already filling the app for more than 8 days. And they're only 7%. So, you know, at the end of the day, the adherence is almost zero. However, we found that 50% of the people who are using the app more than 7 days have 3 or more medications. And no one is prescribing this, so there is an enormous amount of automedication. This is another study, not yet published. We found exactly the same, but in this case in 7,000 subjects. The next question is, what are the doctors doing? Very simple. All doctors, and you prescribe long-term treatment during the pollen season. Who is not doing that in the room? No one. Okay. But none of your patients do that. And when you are a doctor, you do not do it. 0 out of 102. So the allergist behaves like a patient because it is human nature. So my friends, we are following guidelines. We are prescribing long-term treatment. Not a single patient does that. Not a single doctor does that. So we need to change, and this is change management. And this is what we're proposing. So there is a major disconnection between physician's prescription and patient's behavior. Guidelines are not used by patients. Allergy physicians behave like patients. And I'm going to show you that guidelines are incorrect. Because guidelines say you increase your treatment when you are not well. In fact, this is totally wrong in real life. We have 2 studies. This is the first one published. The untreated days are the best days. Surprising, no? Because usually you would think that a patient treats when they are not well. No. They are treating themselves. When they are well, they do not treat themselves. You do not do it as well, and I don't do it as well. Then, MPAZ flu, fluticasone furoate, mometasone furoate. Very interesting. When there is monotherapy, they are all well. This means that patients who are under monotherapy are those who are satisfied by their treatment, exactly like untreated days. But as soon as you go to multiple therapy, you are unwell. So guidelines telling that you increase your treatment to get better, they are wrong. And you can find differences between desloratadine and cetirizine. So this real-life study, now you are going to tell me, well, there is a problem here, because MPAZ flu is similar to corticosteroids. No, because 65 to 72% of people under MPAZ flu are on monotherapy or single treatment, versus 40% for mometasone furoate or fluticasone furoate. So the message here is that we are completely incorrect with the patients, and in fact we need real-life assessment to understand patients. When patients are well, they do not take a medication. They increase the medications to be controlled. Some patients cannot be controlled, and these observations do not account with guidelines. And by the way, not a single patient out of 6,949 followed guidelines. Now, next generation care pathway, we need to do something. Well, this is a project we're doing with the EIT Health, with WHO, and with DG Santé and DG Connect. This is next generation integrated care pathways for allergic rhinitis and asthma multimorbidity. The next slide is very interesting, a model for non-communicable diseases. Well, you have seen this many times, but now we are going in depth. First of all, with Mike Buick, who was the former Deputy Medical Director of NHS England with the Copenhagen government, we are doing, and with Hilary Pinnock, patient participation, health literacy, and self-care through technology-assisted patients' activation. This will be done in 2 months. Second, ARIA in the pharmacy, we did that in 2004. It will be revised, it has been revised. And then we had the next generation great guidelines. That is to say, we're going to test with real-world evidence and the app, the guidelines. And we're going to see which are the recommendations we persist with patients and those which should be changed. Well, we have something which is extremely interesting for you. Each patient can bring you what they have. It takes a minute from the cell phone to the computer. And here, you have the full treatment. You can get 1-2 years treatment. Then, when you see a patient, you will know whether the patient has been adherent, whether the patient took which medication, and what was the control. So this will shorten time to immunotherapy. Sorry. The next point is that we're going to embed on this aerobiology and air pollution. Another therapeutic approach, and Tari is going to tell you fantastic approach now, because probably giving a food to a cat will reduce allergenicity. This exists, I can tell you. I've seen the data. And this is a new approach. And then you need to include work productivity, because you will show to payers that this is very important. Well, this is a mail I received a week ago. And this is, I think, the most important mail of the year. Mask has been selected by DG Santé as a good practice in the field of digital-enabled, integrated, person-centered care. And this is ARIA Phase 5. Recognized, digitally-enabled, integrated, person-centered care. Second, in the context of implementing the communication on the digital transformation of health and care, DG Santé supports the scaling up and wider implementation of good practices. And we have been selected among 12 good practices to present our mask to policymakers and governments in December. So now we are a step forward. We are now with government approval and impact. And I think that we all need to have this chance to have the new care pathways in order to really implement at the government level. Because I don't think there will be too many disease guidelines, because there are more recommendations from governments and things like this, in particular key policy initiatives. So I think that we now have a tool which exists. It exists in most of your countries, even not all. It is available free of charge, and we can change the management of allergic diseases. The future, my sinusitis coach, you will see that today. Home services. Well, we did something in home services, which is probably my best study this year, showing that using an app, but people cleaning houses may participate to health system. And then we are going to the COPD app, it's going on, and we are going also to a multimorbidity app. Thank you.